Final Destination Bloodlines was a shockingly good entry, at least for this series standards. For me, the appeal of Final Destination is how creative can they be with the deaths? In what ways can they set up a sort of Rube Goldberg machine that you think might lead you one direction but can redirect you into a different one? The death should be over the top and completely ridiculous to where it's not just watching kind of a slasher or gore movie. It's more comedic in nature because it's just so absurd and like a Mortal Kombat style of violence. Out of this entire franchise, I think the only movie that people would say is good in earnest is probably the first one. The rest of them kind of devolve into more simple, dumbed down versions, oftentimes being less fun. Outside of maybe the most memorable death of the semi truck with the logs on the back that I think has made everyone my age refuse to drive behind any truck like that ever. And I think this movie does a good job of playing with the misdirection, kind of just having fun with what it is, while also being relatively coherent. I think the characters, for the most part, make believable decisions. They have normal human responses. And as far as these movies go, I think this is about as good as you're going to do. I will admit the performances are a bit lackluster, but I think in the horror genre, you can kind of get away with that just because of the whole absurd nature of a lot of these movies. So the premise of this one is we start off in like the 60s, 70s with Iris having a premonition. So the movie gets to start off right away with a completely ridiculous, over-the-top death scene in a building that's pretty much the equivalent of the Stratosphere Hotel in Vegas. And the way that this premonition works, because she saved so many people, unlike the other movies where they only saved a handful, they were actually able to have descendants. So now death is coming for all the people that were saved and all those who shouldn't exist. Part of Death's hangup is that Iris kind of went crazy. She did the whole conspiracy theory newspaper spiderweb thing with the red tape instead of the red string, but close enough, and went and lived in a cabin by herself in the middle of nowhere and looked for patterns in death and put together this whole encyclopedia, kept track of all the people that she saved and their kids to figure out how death worked. And our main character in this movie, Stephanie, started having the dreams of Iris's premonition when Iris got a cancer diagnosis. How she got this diagnosis when she lives in the middle of nowhere and hasn't stepped outside for 20 years. Can't expect a completely solid plot in a Final Destination movie, I guess. Why does Iris live in this cabin that looks like it's built for protection against zombies as opposed to death? I think a reasonable question. To me, if you're going to do that, I would live in a cabin with literally nothing in it except for running water and then a way to make food or eat canned food, I guess, if that's all she has. But either way, Stephanie reaches out to the family. The whole family's like, fuck Iris. She was crazy. She made our lives miserable. And I do think there's an interesting kind of philosophical conversation to be had here about the fact that when you step outside, you are taking a risk, even if it's minute, and kind of the overcompensation to the point where some people would say you're not even having a life worth living because you're so scared of dying. And the movie kind of toys with this, but it doesn't really get into it. It's more of just an underlying mentality of the characters. It's still interesting nonetheless. But her aunt says, don't look in this drawer where there's some letters, and these letters lead her to Iris's cabin. Iris explains to her that death is coming for her. We see death make a kind of couple half-ass efforts at the cabin that Iris shuts down immediately. She gives Stephanie this big book, and Stephanie kind of thinks it's bullshit and just that she's crazy, like the whole rest of the family does. So Iris steps into a place where she knows death will get her in her little zombie fortress and gets a pipe through the back of her head because she says seeing is believing. So she wants to prove it to Stephanie because she's dying of cancer anyway, so that someone else can try to save the family. Not a bad character thing as far as these movies go. So then Stephanie takes this to the family. She lays it all out for them, tries to explain it, and they're all like, bitch, you're crazy. Again, I think a pretty normal response. Most people would be like, you're out of your mind. You look like a lunatic with your newspapers taped to the wall and your big book of how to die. in really absurd and obscure ways. And then after this, the family's having a big cookout. We see a rake under a trampoline. Some glass makes its way into one of the mixed drinks. We see shards of glass in various places, all kinds of red herrings. A pretty fun scene as far as being creative with things that can kill you in your house if you don't limit yourself to things that are actually likely. And you get a really crazy death for the dad, where it's like this big chain of events that leads to him getting a lawnmower running over his head. And this is what I mean about the violence, is it's so absurd. It goes beyond gross to just funny and kind of just having a good time with itself. So then at this point, the family's a little bit more bought into Stephanie and not calling her as crazy. She begins prioritizing Eric because it goes by age and he's the oldest. I think this is a really nice misdirect because he works in a tattoo shop. Everything is set up. You're led to believe that he dies, but he actually survives. And then after the death of one of the other kids, you get the little character twist of Eric isn't actually your father's son, so he wasn't part of the bloodline. I thought that was a really neat way to go with it, and a really good job of leading you down one path before the twist. So this goes on. They actually find the youngest kid at the time, who's also in danger now, and he went on to be a law enforcement officer who was friends with Iris, so he's aware of the whole death thing. And again, as far as these movies go, pretty solid character choice to have him become a police officer, so he's directly dealing with death and people dying as kind of an amends for his own existence. And he pretty much tells them that you can either kill someone and take the years of their life, or you can die and come back. So you have to completely flatline and then come back, because then death has gotten you. Technically, you just kept living on. So he goes on his way and gives a little speech about enjoying every minute of life because you don't know when it'll be your last one, which I think is a pretty core theme for the movies in general. And as they're at the hospital, they realize that all kinds of shit can kill you at the hospital. A couple of them decide that they're going to try to deliberately die there to end it, because they can die in the hospital and be brought back. Obviously, if you're already in the hospital, that's your best chance of coming back from death. But because it's a Final Destination movie, you end up with a wild and kind of disgusting death instead. That's overall pretty fun. Again, a lot of misdirects here and a pretty clever use of hospital equipment. And this leads to them trying to flee to the cabin. It doesn't work out, obviously. And the way that this movie ends, I think is super fun and kind of ballsy. But if it's also going to be the bookend of the franchise, it's a pretty good way to go, I think. Because you think that the main girl died and came back, but she was never actually dead. And then you get this damn Penny that's been following you since the original premonition a long time ago that set off the whole series of events at the beginning, now setting off another series of events to kill all the characters involved. So now everyone is dead. Death wins. Roll credits. These are not typically my kind of movies, but I had a lot of fun with this one. Pretty high entertainment value, pretty simple. I think a clever way to use the different rules in the series. You can tell they put a lot of effort into putting a bunch of pieces in place that could lead to a death, but you don't know what order they're going to happen in or how they're going to be used. I think pretty good execution overall for these movies. I like that all the characters are like, oh, this sounds like bullshit. They don't just buy into it right away. But then once they see it, they're like, okay, like now we need to be careful because it's pretty obvious that you're not just losing your mind. And some people might find it annoying that it makes out every single thing, like it could kill you. But I think that's part of what makes it kind of fun, is that it overloads you with like every single thing in life could technically kill you in the very, very unlikely but correct circumstances. And this movie makes really good use of that by just showing you everything, zooming in on everything. And it makes it kind of a fun guessing game, honestly, along the way. I had the choice to not go for like kind of gross violence for the most part. You do get some glass through a foot, weird stuff like that that's kind of nasty. But a lot of it is just insane. So yeah, a nice little surprise for me. I wasn't expecting to enjoy this movie. But I'm not going to go on about it. This isn't some cinematic masterpiece. It's more of just kind of where the bar is for this series. But a fun movie overall. I'm going to leave it there for this one. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. Try to respond to the comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.